At 23:47 hours on November 30th, 2024, two American destroyers became the last line of defense between Iranian-backed terror and innocent lives. And what happened next would prove why the U.S. Navy remains the world's most lethal maritime force. The USS Stockdale and USS O'Kane cut through the dark waters of the Gulf of Aden like steel predators, their Aegis Combat Systems painting the night with invisible radar beams. Between them sailed three American merchant vessels, floating symbols of global commerce that the Houthis had marked for destruction. But tonight, these ships carried more than cargo. They carried the promise that American steel would stand between chaos and civilization. All stations, combat, we have multiple surface contacts bearing 045, range 35,000 yards, and closing, announced Petty Officer Rodriguez from the Stockdale's Combat Information Center. The AN/SPY-1D radar had detected what every sailor in the Red Sea had come to fear: the electronic signature of incoming death. For 15 months, the Iranian-backed Houthis had turned the world's most critical shipping lane into a killing field. Their arsenal, supplied by Tehran's Revolutionary Guard, included everything from explosive-laden speedboats to advanced anti-ship ballistic missiles capable of maneuvering at hypersonic speeds. But tonight, they had made a fatal miscalculation. They had targeted ships under the protection of the United States Navy. The first warning came at 23:51 hours. Vampire, vampire, vampire. The tactical action officer's voice cut through the controlled chaos of the Combat Information Center as hostile missiles painted themselves across every radar screen. Multiple inbound ASBMS, bearing 030, range 25 nautical miles and closing fast. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, the Stockdale's weapons officer, felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that comes when training meets reality. TIO, weapons control, I have 3, correction, 4, inbound anti-ship ballistic missiles. Request weapons free. Weapons control, TAO, you are weapons free. Defend the ship, defend the convoy. The first SM-6 missile erupted from Vertical Launch System Cell 15 with a thunderous roar that shook the destroyer's superstructure. A pillar of flame and smoke marked the beginning of what would become one of the most intensive naval engagements since World War II. The 4.2 million interceptor streaked toward its target at Mach 3.5, its active radar seeker painting the incoming ballistic missile with deadly precision. Birds away! Birds away! SM-6 in flight, time to impact 34 seconds, Rodriguez called out, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. But the Houthis weren't finished. As the first ballistic missile disintegrated in a brilliant flash 12,000 feet above the convoy, 3 more threats materialized on radar. New contacts. 3 OWA UAS, bearing 315, range 8,000 yards and closing fast. One-way attack unmanned aerial systems, suicide drones packed with explosives and programmed for martyrdom. Cheap, expendable, and terrifyingly effective against undefended targets. But these weren't undefended targets. These were American merchant vessels under the protection of 2 of the most advanced warships ever built. The USS O'Kane's Phalanx close-in weapons system came alive with a sound like the world's angriest chainsaw. 20mm tungsten rounds poured from the 6-barreled Gatling gun at 4,500 rounds per minute, creating a wall of metal that no drone could penetrate. The first suicide drone disintegrated in a shower of sparks and twisted metal, its explosive payload detonating harmlessly in the night sky. Splash 1 UAS, called out Fire Controlman First Class Martinez from the O'Kane's weapons control station, continuing engagement on remaining contacts. The second drone met its end, courtesy of an evolved Sea Sparrow missile, a 1.8 million interceptor that turned the $50,000 drone into expensive confetti. The third drone, perhaps sensing its impending doom, attempted an evasive maneuver that would have impressed its Iranian handlers. It didn't impress the O'Kane's fire control computer, which calculated a new intercept solution in 0.3 seconds and dispatched another ESSM to complete the job. But the night's work was far from over. At 0003 hours, the Stockdale's SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite detected something that made every sailor's blood run cold. The distinctive radar signature of an anti-ship cruise missile, sea-skimming at 500 knots and programmed to turn American steel into twisted wreckage. New contact, ESSM bearing 270, range 15,000 yards, altitude 50 feet, and closing fast. The radar operator's voice carried the weight of imminent danger. Anti-ship cruise missiles were the Houthis' most sophisticated weapon. Iranian-supplied death machines capable of maneuvering around defensive fire and striking with pinpoint accuracy. Commander James Rodriguez, the Stockdale's commanding officer, made the call that would define his career. All stations, this is the captain. We are engaging with Standard Missile. Fire control, you are cleared to engage. The SM-2 Block 3A missile that roared from VLS-23 represented 40 years of American naval innovation. Its semi-active radar seeker locked onto the incoming cruise missile with mechanical precision, while its 137-pound warhead prepared to deliver justice at 2,400 miles per hour. The intercept occurred at a range of 4,200 yards, close enough for the merchant sailors to see the explosion, far enough to keep them safe. Splash 1 ASCM, all hostile contacts neutralized. The cheers that erupted in both combat information centers were quickly suppressed by professional discipline, but the relief was palpable. 7 hostile weapons had been launched at American ships and American lives. 7 hostile weapons had been destroyed by American steel and American courage. The engagement had lasted exactly 11 minutes and 37 seconds. In that brief span, the 2 destroyers had expended 3 SM-6 missiles, 2 SM-2 missiles, 2 ESSM interceptors, and approximately 400 rounds of 20mm ammunition. The cost in dollars was staggering, nearly $30 million in defensive munitions to defeat perhaps $500,000 worth of Iranian-supplied weapons. But as National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan would later note, when American lives are on the line, cost becomes irrelevant. The human cost of restraint would have been far higher. Each merchant vessel carried crews of 20 to 25 sailors, men and women from around the world who had chosen to brave the Red Sea because they trusted American naval power to keep them safe. That trust had been validated in the most dramatic way possible. The tactical picture that emerged in the hours following the engagement painted a sobering portrait of modern asymmetric warfare. The Houthis had coordinated a multi-domain attack using ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and suicide drones, a level of sophistication that would have been unthinkable for a proxy force just a decade earlier. Their Iranian sponsors had provided not just weapons, but training, intelligence, and tactical coordination. Yet for all their preparation, they had failed to account for the one factor that has defined American naval supremacy for over a century: the professional competence of American sailors under fire. The crew performed flawlessly, Commander Rodriguez later reported to CENTCOM headquarters. Every system functioned as designed, every sailor executed their duties with precision, and every threat was neutralized before it could endanger the convoy. This is what American naval training produces. The engagement also highlighted the evolving nature of naval warfare in the 21st century. The days of ship-to-ship gun battles were long past, replaced by a deadly chess game of sensors, missiles, and electronic warfare. Victory belonged not to the side with the biggest guns, but to the side with the best training, the most advanced technology, and the clearest understanding of the battle space. The Stockdale and O'Kane possessed all three in abundance. Their Aegis Combat Systems could track hundreds of targets simultaneously while engaging dozens. Their vertical launch systems could fire multiple interceptors in rapid succession, creating overlapping fields of defensive fire. Most importantly, their crews had trained for exactly this scenario in countless exercises, turning theoretical knowledge into life-saving action. The strategic implications extended far beyond the Gulf of Aden. Every successful Houthi attack on commercial shipping drove up insurance rates, forced vessels to take longer routes around Africa, and demonstrated that Iran could project power far beyond its borders through proxy forces. The American response sent an equally clear message. Attacks on international shipping would be met with overwhelming defensive force. The engagement also showcased the economic realities of modern naval warfare. The 7 interceptor missiles fired by the 2 destroyers cost more than most nations spend on their entire naval budgets. Yet the alternative, allowing hostile forces to attack commercial shipping with impunity, would have cost the global economy billions of dollars in disrupted trade. As dawn broke over the Gulf of Aden, the three merchant vessels continued their transit toward the Suez Canal, their crews safe and their cargo intact. Behind them, the Stockdale and O'Kane maintained their protective formation, ready to repeat the night's performance if necessary. Their magazines were lighter, but their resolve remained unshaken. The message to Tehran and its Houthi proxies was unmistakable. American naval power would not be intimidated, American commerce would not be disrupted, and American lives would not be threatened without consequence. The Gulf of Aden remained open for business, protected by the finest navy the world has ever known. In the quiet professionalism of sailors who had done their duty, in the technological marvels that had protected innocent lives, and in the unwavering commitment to freedom of navigation that defines American naval power, the true victory had been won. The Houthis had fired 7 weapons and achieved nothing. The U.S. Navy had fired 7 interceptors and preserved everything that mattered. These are the guardians of the sea lanes, the protectors of global commerce, the thin blue line between order and chaos. They ask for nothing more than the chance to serve, and they deserve nothing less than our unwavering support. In the darkness of the Gulf of Aden, they proved once again that American naval power remains the ultimate guarantor of maritime freedom. When the smoke cleared, the Red Sea fell silent. But if you think this was the last time America's fleet would be tested, think again. Subscribe and stand by for the next classified chapter.